A billionairess hired a struggling single mother as her fake friend until the woman's journal exposes a past she'd tried to erase.
Catherine Bellwether's perfectly polished nail tapped the contract. $50,000 a month to attend galas and laugh at my jokes? The single mother across the desk didn't smile. You always were terrible at jokes, room 4. Catherine's champagne flute slipped. Only Tasha noticed the orphanage number she'd buried 30 years ago. The office was all cool marble and expensive art, a far cry from the cramped apartment Tasha shared with her daughter. Catherine's collection of antique fire extinguishers lined the walls, polished brass beauties that had never existed at St. Agnes Orphanage. Tasha recognized the number Catherine had tried to hide. Room 4, the room they'd shared before the fire. "You're not what I expected," Catherine said, regaining her composure. "My assistant said you were desperate for the job." "I am," Tasha admitted. "But I'm not desperate enough to pretend I don't recognize you." Catherine's eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're talking about." Tasha stood and walked to the foyer, running her fingers over the intricate tile pattern. They sold the floors first, after the fire, when they were stripping everything valuable from St. Agnes. Catherine followed her, her designer heels clicking on the marble. "What do you want?" Tasha turned to face her. "I want my daughter to have opportunities I never had. The job seemed convenient." Before Catherine could respond, her assistant entered, eyeing Tasha's stained blazer with disdain. "Ms. Bellwether, the gala committee is waiting for your approval on the seating chart." Tasha opened her worn leather journal to a page filled with sketches. One showed 2 girls sharing a narrow bed, one blonde, one dark-haired. Below it, in careful script, "Me and C before the fire." Catherine's face went pale. "Where did you get that?" "I drew it from memory," Tasha said quietly. "Every night since I was 8. The assistant scoffed. "Don't believe anything this woman says, Miss Bellwether. Look at a thrift store shoes." Tasha didn't flinch. "They're comfortable, unlike the ones they made us wear at St. Agnes. Remember how the left one always pinched your foot, see?" Catherine's security chief appeared in the doorway, his expression grave. "Miss Bellwether, a word." He leaned in, whispering just loud enough for Tasha to hear. "That woman's been digging into the 1992 accident for years. She's been interviewing former staff." Later that evening, Catherine poured herself a drink in her penthouse living room. The city lights glittered below, but all she could see was the flickering orange glow of the St. Agnes fire. She'd built her empire on the foundation of that night, adopted by the wealthy Bellwethers immediately after the accident, given a new name, a new life, a new identity. Room 4 had become Catherine Bellwether, society darling and business magnate. The doorbell rang. Against her better judgment, Catherine let Tasha in. "I know why you're really here," Catherine said, her voice tight. "You want money." Tasha shook her head. "I want the truth. My daughter is 8, the same age I was when they pulled me from the rubble. I don't want her growing up with the nightmares I've had." Catherine looked away. "There is no truth. It was an electrical fire, tragic but accidental." Tasha opened her journal to a different page, a detailed sketch of the orphanage's electrical system. "This is what it looked like before the fire. This is what it looked like after." She pointed to critical differences. "Someone tampered with the wiring. Someone wanted that building to burn." Catherine felt her chest tighten. She'd spent 30 years burying the memory, but now it flooded back, the smell of gasoline, the sound of running footsteps before the flames erupted. "I can't help you," Catherine whispered. Tasha met her gaze. "You already are. Your foundation funds the city's child welfare system. Take me to where you store the orphanage records. Let me see what really happened." The next morning, Catherine led Tasha through the Bellwether family archives, a climate-controlled vault filled with decades of documents. Catherine had never visited this place. The Bellwethers had discouraged her from asking about her past. Tasha moved with purpose, pulling files, cross-referencing dates, comparing handwriting samples. Catherine watched as the single mother transformed into a skilled investigator. "Here," Tasha said, holding up a document. "Your adoptive parents made a payment to St. Agnes 6 months before the fire. Not a donation, a transaction." She pointed to a line item, property clearance.
Catherine's hands felt suddenly cold as she took the document. What does that mean? It means they paid to have the orphanage burned, Tasha said quietly. But look at this. She opened her journal to another sketch, a list of children's names. They didn't want to kill everyone. They only wanted one child, the blonde girl from room 4. Catherine sank into a chair. They wanted me specifically? Tasha nodded. You were special. The Bellwethers had been trying to adopt for years. Something about your birth records made you valuable to them. Catherine thought of her collection of antique fire extinguishers, all dated after the St. Agnes fire. She'd been trying to extinguish a blaze she couldn't remember, collecting symbols of safety that had never existed when she needed them most. The Bellwether family lawyer arrived unexpectedly, his expression unreadable. Catherine, we need to talk about this situation. Tasha didn't wait for Catherine to respond. Mr. Thorne, isn't it? I've been looking forward to meeting you. You were the Bellwethers' lawyer 30 years ago, weren't you? Thorne's eyes narrowed. And you are who? Tasha Williams, former resident of St. Agnes Orphanage, room 3. The lawyer's composure slipped for just a moment. I see. He turned to Catherine. I've prepared a generous offer for Miss Williams, $2 million in exchange for her silence and a signed statement that she will not pursue any further inquiries into the St. Agnes matter. Catherine looked at Tasha, who stood perfectly still, her worn blazer incongruous against the vault's opulence. What do you say, Tasha? $2 million to disappear. Tasha shook her head. I don't want blood money. Then what do you want? Thorne asked, his voice tight. The truth, Tasha said, and justice for the children who died that night. Catherine's phone buzzed. It was her assistant. Miss Bellwether, your daughter found something in the vault. She says it's important. Tasha's 8-year-old daughter stood in the archives holding a photograph with trembling hands. The girl wore a blue hair ribbon identical to the one in Tasha's journal sketch. Look, Mama, she said, showing them the photo. St. Agnes staff, 1991. Catherine took the photo, her blood running cold. It showed the orphanage staff smiling in front of the building, and there in the back row was a younger Mr. Thorne holding what looked unmistakably like a gasoline can. The photo was hidden behind a Philanthropist of the Year plaque that honored Thorne for his work with orphaned children. This changes everything, Catherine whispered. Thorne's face had gone pale. That photo is doctored. I've never set foot in that orphanage. Tasha opened her journal to a page filled with newspaper clippings about the fire. Then explain why this article from the day after the fire mentions a man matching your description seen near the building, carrying a container that smelled of gasoline. Thorne backed toward the door. You're making a mistake, Catherine. The Bellwether family has given you everything. Don't throw it away for this woman's fantasies. Catherine looked at Tasha, at the girl clutching her mother's hand, wearing the same kind of ribbon Catherine had worn as a child. Get out, she said quietly, and tell the Bellwethers I'll be contacting their attorneys about the terms of my adoption.
2 weeks later, Catherine stood before the city council, Tasha at her side. 30 years ago, Catherine began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, the St. Agnes orphanage burned to the ground. 12 children and 3 staff members died that night. The official report called it an electrical fire, but the truth is far more sinister. She presented the documents Tasha had uncovered, the payments from the Bellwethers, the tampered wiring diagrams, the photograph of Thorne with the gasoline can. I am liquidating my trust fund to rebuild St. Agnes, not as an orphanage, but as a center for children who have experienced trauma. The first resident will be Mr. Thorne's granddaughter, whom he abandoned when her mother died last year. Gasps
filled the room. Thorne sat in the back, his face ashen. After the meeting, Tasha handed Catherine a small charred object wrapped in silk. This was in the rubble of our room, the only thing that survived the fire. Catherine unwrapped the silk to reveal a hair ribbon, badly burned but still recognizable. Etched into the fabric in what looked like melted plastic were the letters C+T. Catherine's throat tightened as she traced the letters. "I made this for you," she whispered. "For your birthday. I stayed up all night sewing those letters." Tasha nodded. "You gave it to me the night before the fire. You said it was a promise that we'd always be sisters." At the groundbreaking ceremony for the new St. Agnes Center, Catherine wore no gloves, no mask, no barrier between herself and the world. Her collection of antique fire extinguishers had been donated to fire safety programs across the city. Tasha's daughter ran up to her, holding a blue hair ribbon. "Can you put it in my hair?" the girl asked. Catherine knelt and carefully tied the ribbon, her fingers brushing against the child's hair. "Of course," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'd be honored." Later, as the crowd gathered for the ribbon cutting, Catherine reached for the diamond choker she'd worn every day since her adoption, the one that had covered the scar from where she'd been pulled from the fire's rubble. For 30 years, she'd worn it like armor, like a shield against the past, but today, she didn't need it anymore. Her fingers found the clasp. With a soft click, the choker came free. The pale stripe beneath her jawline caught the sunlight, not a scar, but the outline of a sister's embrace, finally visible after 30 decades in the dark. At the ribbon cutting, Catherine finally removed her diamond choker, the one she'd worn every day since adoption. The pale stripe beneath looked less like a scar and more like the outline of a sister's embrace.